As always, another real treat for you. Frank Rich is in the house. What's cracking?
Brad, good to be here, brother. Thank you.
Dude, you got a pretty good podcast. Everyone should go listen to the Superhuman Life Podcast. You can find him at Coach Frank Rich.
Coach Frank Rich, yes, sir.
And Rebuilt Recovery is his website, rebuiltrecovery.com. So, dude, you basically help people with porn addiction. Now, I don't know where your story begins. You used to be a bodybuilder. You're an entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera. So where did your story begin? You said you were an addict yourself. What, of porn or drugs or what?
Yeah, man. I've had my struggles and issues with drugs and alcohol, and we talked a little bit about that on the podcast. I became aware of my porn addiction in late 2018. We don't need to go back the whole story, getting introduced to it at 6, coming up, growing up, struggling with it. The rise of technology for me is when it really began to escalate. And,
what's addicted?
Clinically or?
Well, I mean, like, dude, you are exposed to porn growing up. When I was, I think maybe 6, 7 years old, I got in trouble because I took my dad's Playboy magazines and I spray painted the boobs and the private parts in the magazine. And, he got pissed, obviously, but I was exposed to Playboy magazines as a little kid age.
As most boys are,
that's what I'm saying.
I was as well, right?
So that ain't addicted.
No. And
what causes you to be, what makes you addicted? Like when you watch it every day?
I think when it's impacting other areas of your life, is it impacting your intimate relationships? Are you avoiding social interactions? Are you struggling with some of the mental health side effects that we can kind of, dive into if you're curious around some of that stuff. But I think when it's having impact on areas outside of your life, I'm never one to say that just because you watch porn, you have a problem with it. I mean, I don't think that it's good and healthy for anybody, especially in today's age, to consume it.
At all?
I don't believe so. There's too many links to human trafficking, and we can go down deep holes there if you wanted to, but I am, I guess, anti-porn if you wanted to kind of put a label on it. But I don't think that it's healthy because how it changes the way you see people, how it changes your intimate relationships. And you talked about seeing your dad's magazine when you were a little boy. I think the internet has created a different type of drug, right? The way that it rewires your brain, the way that it increases dopamine, just it's on a whole different level. So I don't think it's healthy for anybody.
Yeah. Well, I'm not one to, argue much because I'm not a big porn guy in the first place, but I've watched it. And, I've never really thought, people shouldn't watch it because, like, who cares? Like, there's a couple people fucking, who cares? Like, what does that affect people? Like, what have you seen in your work where like guys what have they lost? What are they sitting at home jacking off all day? Like, what? I don't get the addiction part.
Yeah. I mean, just like with anything, right? You can have a drink, you can have a couple drinks, once a week, once a month, and it maybe not be a problem. But the guy that is leaving work 15 minutes early, the guy that can't go home without stopping at the bar, the guy that is avoiding relationships, avoiding social interactions, I think the same issues begin to manifest with a porn addiction. Now we can't say, because there's a lot of research now that is showing that when you watch people having sex, the part of your brain that is highlighted, or the part of the brain that really lights up, is a part that's associated with objects. So we talk about objectification of women. You're literally rewiring your brain to see people as objects. So yeah, it's a drug in and of itself that is rewiring people's brains. It's changing their hearts. It's changing relationships. I mean, if you are avoiding, for the young guys out there, if you're avoiding approaching women because you have everything you want at home with porn, then you're going to get into some issues there.
But I mean, is there dudes like that? Because porn makes me want to go get women. Like if I watch a fucking porn, you get freaking horny. You're like, dude, I got to get some chicks.
Oh, dude. I mean, hundreds of guys that I speak to on a monthly basis, right? I mean, these guys, you're in your early 50s, right?
Well, so mid 50s now.
Mid 50s, yeah. So we have, Brad, we have a generation that is coming up now. There's in their early 20s. I don't know if it's Generation Z, but has had access to a smartphone since they were in elementary school.
Yeah.
As that brain is being developed, like they're consuming pornography, the average age of first exposure is somewhere between 9 to 11 years old. So I think it's changing society, it's changing men. And it's great that you haven't fallen into that, but I've had guys in your generation, I've had guys that are 50s into 60s that erectile dysfunction has now begun to become an issue. They can't even perform sexually with their wives or partners. So
without porn or what do you mean?
So because
well, that ain't porn, is it? That's the food. That's the fucking chemicals.
Well, I would say that probably those factors are playing into that as well. But
because porn does the opposite for hard-ons, doesn't it?
Well, not if you've wired yourself as the pathway to orgasm is through watching a screen and touching yourself. Like over time, that becomes how your body wants to get it. Brad, I struggled with this in my 30s. Like I had beautiful women that I had relationships with, and I was healthy. I was a bodybuilder. You talked about it in the intro there. But for a young guy in his early 30s that couldn't perform sexually, like without using porn either before, during, or after to complete it, that's a problem.
Sounds like one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never I guess I just can't wrap my head around it because, but I can't wrap my head around anybody being fucking addicted to heroin either. Like, dude, are you stupid? But heroin I see because like you do it and you like, you need more. Mm-hmm. So there are people that literally, have a secret porn addiction to where every time they get a chance, they're watching porn, which could be any second with this thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think the stat is somewhere around 40% of people have admitted to watching porn at work.
And then you've heard of Andrew Tate, I'm sure.
Obviously, yes.
Tate and a couple of these guys that are running around right now, they're against porn. They're saying, porn will hurt you. Mm-hmm. I've never really thought of it that way, which is interesting.
Yeah, I love that guys like Tate and the larger platforms are using it because, like I said, man, for me up until 2018, it was something like if I would have thought about it, yeah, I maybe had an irregular relationship with pornography. I probably maybe use it back then if I thought about it. I was using it more than regular people. There were definitely times I've used it in public type of restrooms. There were times I avoided social interactions. There were times I left social interactions to go home to watch porn. But I don't think I would have ever actually said I was a porn addict up until 2018 because it wasn't a conversation. I started my podcast back in 2019 because when I got on the other side of it and I got freedom, I felt different. I saw the world differently. I saw myself differently. I felt more connected to people than I'd ever been in my entire life. And I saw an opportunity to maybe speak to the younger men out there, because could I have been saved of years of struggling? Could I have been saved of years of issues with it had there been guys that I looked up to talking about it? So that was really the driving desire for me to start having the conversations on the podcast around it. And out of that really birthed the coaching. Like I didn't set down this path, 4.5 years ago to say, I want to start coaching men. I want to start helping men overcome pornography addiction. It came to me just by having the conversation regularly. So I love seeing guys like Tate and the bigger platforms out there, and even you today, bringing awareness to this.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really said don't watch it because again, I don't even acknowledge. It's like even when you said it in there, I'm like porn addiction. See, I just can't like. So what are the?
Well, I would say we can dissect your life, right, and maybe see why it's not even a major issue. I mean, you're living in what you maybe describe as a purpose or bigger calling for your life. Like you're having massive impact on the world and people around you. You wake up every day with something to look forward to. I've seen your social media. I've heard you talk about your wife and your relationships. You have all these things that are fulfilling you. So the desire to go home at the end of the day and suppress yourself, or not suppress yourself, almost, just lose yourself, like just like you would with drinking or drugs, right? You're trying to suppress some feelings. The same thing happens with porn. So if a guy isn't checking a box in work, if he isn't checking box with his relationship, if he doesn't have social interactions, social friends, a social circle that he's involved with, that is going to create the desire. Well, let me go find and seek something. And porn, like you said, because it's not a drug, you don't feel impaired after. People in your life you're not walking around with like porn breath like you would if you're drinking all the time. So people don't know. I mean, I've even said for me, I struggled with it for 10 plus years and nobody in my life knew about it because I was able to keep it a secret.